Okay, so welcome to the webinar. Tonight's webinar, as you can see there, is called Grow Yourself to Grow Your Business. And it's a series, it's number 6, sorry, in a series of 8. So as you can see there, numbers 1 and 2 and 3 are really all about just getting started and what to do. Make sure you do all these things in the first few weeks, building a customer base, so the retail side of the business really. Number 4 and 5 are about the team building side. So number 4 about getting started on team building, and number 5 about how to support new team members when they join your team. And then number 6, 7 and 8 are all the kind of the personal skills, the personal development side of the business, which is really, really important. And actually these could easily be numbers 1, 2 and 3 anyway, because if you get your personal development right, then the rest of it will kind of follow naturally. But I'll show you at the end where all of the recordings are. So especially for those of you who have just joined, if you wanted to go back and watch number 1 and 2 or 3, then you can always go back and do that. So let's start off with assuming that, and I appreciate that some of you have only just started, so you might not even have these bits yet. But assuming that you've been in the business for a couple of weeks, you know how to put your catalogues out, and you've got an idea about building a customer base, and you've done the team building training, and you've got an idea of how to sponsor somebody into your team. What other skills do you need to really grow a successful business? And that's what we're going to cover basically tonight. So what we're covering is follow the system. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. Kleeneze's been Kleeneze's been in business for 91 years now. And certainly the last 20-25 years have been pretty much following the same system. Obviously there's some new technologies and so on. But the point behind this training is if you can find somebody who's doing something successfully, you can copy what they're doing. You don't need to reinvent the wheel every time you start. There's some useful things that you should understand that will help you in your business, and we'll go through a little bit of that. And then there's a little bit of recommended reading, which I'm going to quickly summarise, just to help you get started on some personal development, which hopefully this webinar tonight will inspire you to do. So, when you were at school, I don't know about you, but teachers seem to frown when I just try to copy my classmates' schoolwork. I never got kind of congratulated for my innovation or anything like that. So basically you're told you're not allowed to copy, you're cheating. But at Kleeneze it's completely different. At Kleeneze it's the route to your success. If you find somebody who is doing something successful, and hopefully it'll be your sponsor or their upline maybe, then you should copy what they do. And most of what Kleeneze does follows a general system, but there are some specifics. Different teams have a few slight differences. But the system that you should copy is what we're going to cover at the moment. And basically, you've been learning most of it on these webinars. So for those of you who have only just joined, if you go back over the webinars 1, 2, 3 on the catalogue side and 4 and 5 on the team building side, that pretty much teaches you what you need to do. If you combine that with the day-to-day training from your sponsor, then that's it. You really don't need to kind of work out for yourself how to build a successful business. As I've said there, it's been in its current form for probably more like 25 years now, and you don't need to reinvent the wheel, but that doesn't mean that you can't be creative. The system gives you, if you like, the infrastructure and the basics, but being creative is good. It allows you to get your kind of imagination juices flowing, and if you're a creative sort of person, then that's great. Well, basically, as I said there, find someone who is successful and copy them. And that will hopefully be your upline or possibly their upline, but it might also be somebody that you see at meetings. You often find it at all of the meetings, and I know I often meet Beryl at the Kleeneze Millionaires and at the national conferences, and the whole point of these meetings is for successful people to share with us their information and inspiration. So they're a great place to sort of learn and be inspired by successful distributors. So a little bit of understanding, just to kind of get some foundations in place, I guess. The first thing to understand really is Kleeneze is part of what's called a network marketing industry, sometimes called MLM, which is multi-level marketing. And there are lots of different companies out there that do a similar thing to Kleeneze in terms of how they build the infrastructure. So the team members, how you recruit people in, and you earn commission on the sales of the people that you bring into the business and the people that they bring into the business, and so on. So a couple of great books to read. One book and one audio CD. So the first one there is by a chap called Don Taylor, the 45-second presentation. And that's just a really great, very simple book, sort of lots of pictures, big words, nice and easy to read. Literally, you could sit down for an hour and you'd read it cover to cover. It just gives you a really good understanding of how network marketing works and the power of network marketing, really. And then the other one, and this is by one of my favourite speakers, by a chap called Jim Rohn, and this is an audio CD, not a book, and it's called Building Your Network Marketing Business. And you can get them off Amazon or eBay, or if you go to any of our local meetings or the regional meetings or the national meetings, they're always on sale there. That's one of my favourite CDs, and I've still got that in my car, and I listen to it regularly, even though I've probably listened to it hundreds and hundreds of times. He's just got such a great way of speaking, and he just explains how network marketing works. It's not specific to Kleeneze, but explains how network marketing works in great terms. So certainly recommend those two as a good place to start. What else do you need to understand? So on top of the network marketing side, you need to obviously understand a little bit about how Kleeneze works, and specifically about how you get paid. So Kleeneze has kind of two different ways of paying you, and it's useful just to understand, and when I say 2 steps ahead of you, Kleeneze has a kind of, if you imagine a kind of step ladder that you can work your way up, earning bigger and bigger bonuses and bigger incentives and so on. So you don't necessarily need to understand the entire pay plan, right the way up to, Bob Webb and beyond. And for those of you, again, who are new, Bob Webb's earning probably around £40,000 a month. He's the top earner in the business. And he can certainly explain to you how he got to how he's doing what he's doing now. But it's useful to kind of start off understanding where you are now and what the next couple of steps are, because that gives you kind of some achievable goals to get to very quickly, in the next kind of month or two. So understand that we all get around about 21% commission from all of your own orders. It's not an exact figure because some products have more and some products have less, but around about 21% from all of your own orders. And then on top of that, there are volume bonuses. So depending on how many orders you place, and also any team members that you might have, then you can get bonuses at the end of each Kleeneze period, which is 28 days. And that'll be, 10% is the first one, 13, 15, and you can see there you get a larger percentage of your bonus each time, and the more sales that you achieve, the bigger the bonuses. When you hit the 24% level, then you become a gold distributor, and there are many steps beyond that as well: senior distributors, bronze executive distributors, and getting up to sort of 10, 13, 15, 18% is certainly achievable just on your own, just by doing your own catalogues, building a good, strong customer base. The more time and effort you can put into it, the more you can earn on that. Getting beyond 18%, up to 21%, 24% and beyond really requires some team building. Occasionally people do it on their own, but it's much more sustainable if you've built a team. But just understand a little bit about that. And if I've just gone over it very briefly tonight, so if you'd like to understand a little bit more about that, just let me know at the end and I can send you a bit more information about how that works. But at any of the local opportunity meetings, they're often explained in more detail there as well. And then the next thing really is just understanding that when you're building your business, it's really a numbers game. And what do we mean by that? Well, when you're first doing your retail side, the rewards, the earnings that you get from your catalogues is very simple. Just the more catalogues you put out, the more customers you'll find, the more orders you'll get, and the more income you'll get. If you want to pay right, just put more catalogues out. It's very simple. You get rewarded for your own efforts. And it's the same if you decide to get into the team building side. The more leads you can generate, and leads are basically people that might be interested in earning a bit of extra money. So the more leads you can generate, the more people will join your team, and the bigger your bonuses will be. So it is very much a numbers game. And that Jim Rohn CD I mentioned earlier, that building your network marketing business, is a great one for kind of explaining that. A little while ago I was at a conference and somebody said something, it was almost like one of these throwaway comments, and it's really stuck with me ever since then. What they said was, if you only do what you know you should do, you can achieve anything. And that is so true, and in Kleeneze especially, you know, pretty much once you've been in the business for more than a couple of weeks, you pretty much know how to put a catalogue out, how to put an order in, and you've been in the business a bit yourself, so you know how to explain to somebody how the business works. So to build a business, you need to put more catalogues out, or you need to talk to more people to get more people in your team. And you can achieve anything you want if you just do enough of that. It's really not complicated, it's just doing as much of it as you can to achieve whatever you want to. And another quote from Jim Rohn again there, work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Now this is a great one, because what this is basically saying is education should never stop. It's not something that you stop when you leave school. So Jim's saying, you know, you should be learning all the time. Work harder on your personal development, on your own education. And if you spend more time working for a boss and making him rich than you do on yourself, then you need to take a look at that, because it's, you know, if you can work harder on yourself, you're going to be earning a lot more than you can possibly do in a job. So on that basis, really I advise you all to become a sponge for information. Really learn as much as you can about Kleeneze, about network marketing, and just about yourself. You'll find that you learn a lot about yourself in Kleeneze, and lots of people say that many of the benefits they get from being a Kleeneze distributor are not to do with the money and the incentives and the cars and the holidays. It's about how they've grown as a person, their confidence, and their sort of, you know, all the friends that they make. So becoming a sponge for information is a really useful sort of skill to develop. And one way to do that is just to plug into personal development. And what do I mean by that? Well, personal development is probably the most valuable skill set that you can learn through Kleeneze. Just make sure that you do as much reading as you can, watch as many webinars and videos, and go to meetings and listen to people who are, you know, doing well in the business, see what they're doing and copy what they're doing. And this is webinar number 6. Webinar 8, I go into the personal development side in a lot more detail. So hopefully that, you know, if you can either, if you're enthusiastic, you can go and have a look at the recording of that one in a moment when I explain where the recordings are. Or, you know, if you hang on a couple of weeks, we'll be doing number 8 anyway. And that will just go into the personal development side in more detail. And the last thing, the really big recommendation for you all, is to plug into all of the meetings. Try to get to as many meetings as you can, because I find that when I first started off, I was going to all of the millionaires meetings, and after about, I think after I've been to about 4 or 5, and for those of you who haven't been to one, the millionaires meetings on a weekend, there's about 5 a year, so it's not quite every couple of months, but there's lots of fantastic speakers, and you learn such a lot there. And they're usually on a Sunday, and they kind of start about 12, finish about 4 or 5. So it's kind of like a half a day, a bit more than a half a day, but not quite a whole day. But what I always find is you would go to a meeting, and sometimes you'd hear somebody, and they'd be saying something about the business, and you'd be thinking, oh yeah, I think I kind of know that, I understand that, I'm doing that already. And then the next speaker would just have something that they would say to you, and maybe you'd heard it before, but just the way they explained it, or their particular story and how it completely changed them around, makes you sort of think, oh my God, you know what, I'd never noticed that before, but that's absolutely true. If I just did this instead of that, that would just make such a big difference. And it's those golden nuggets that you find at the meetings that, you know, if you didn't go there, you might never sort of make that change, and your business might just be plodding along, you know, kind of struggling to achieve what you're hoping to achieve out of it. So really recommend go to as many of the meetings as you can. Okay, a little list here, well, not a little list, a big list, but a list that I'm not going to go through in a lot of detail. Some great books to read, or to listen to. If you're the sort of person that prefers to listen to things in your car, especially if you do a lot of driving, then get them on audio CD. So many things you can either get on audio CD or download onto via some kind of app and stick it on your iPhone or whatever phone you might have, or an iPod or something like that. I'm going to go through a couple of these in a minute. The ones in blue I'm going to go through in a little bit more detail, but have a look at any of those. If there's any kind of names that you recognise or titles that you fancy the look of, they're all great books. And as I said, this is recorded, so if you want to come back to this particular slide to make a note of any of these, then just go to the recording once it's done, and then obviously you can pause it at this point. So the books that I've highlighted in blue there are just my personal favourites. So I talked a bit about this at the beginning, the Building Your Network Marketing Business by Jim Rohn. As I said, I find Jim is just so easy to listen to. He's a bit like a kind of favourite old grandfather. Jim passed away sadly about 3 or 4 years ago now, but a lot of his stuff is on YouTube. But as I say, that CD there you can probably get for less than £5, and it's worth its weight in gold. So definitely get that one. As I said, as it says there, it's kind of philosophies about network marketing, not specific to Kleeneze. And it was my first one that I ever bought, and I think it's possibly still my favourite now. As I say, I still listen to it lots. And on that basis, Jim Rohn, as I said, also wrote a number of books, and this is one of my favourites as well, 7 Strategies for Wealth and Happiness. And it goes over a variety of things, but the particular bits that I like, there's a great section on goal setting, kind of moving from where you are now to, what is it you want to change in your life? How can you kind of get there? And it's a great kind of way of doing that. Talks a bit about investments and kind of his philosophies in life, which I think are probably Jim's strengths, where there's so many of his kind of phrases and quotes, if you like, that people recall. And it makes such a lot of sense. So, great book. If you're more of a reader than a listener, then certainly that's one worth getting. Right, there's a couple of other books here that are kind of both on the same idea. The first one is called The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson, and the second one is called The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. And basically, they're both kind of saying the same thing, that it's not the big decisions that make you successful or a failure. It's the little ones that you do every day. And one of the examples they quoted was, if you can imagine, if you're starting here and your goal is to lose some weight, and every day you've got a decision to make. You can get up in the morning and eat an apple, or you can get up in the morning and have a slice of toast with, peanut butter and jam on it or something like that. And now, if you do that tomorrow, then the next day, if you weigh yourself, you probably won't have lost any weight, and you probably won't have put any weight on, depending on what you've done. But if you repeat that the next day, and the next day, and the next day, after a period of time, the difference, having that apple every day rather than having the toast with all the jam and everything with more calories, will gradually start to make a difference. And what you'll find is this is what happens. If the green is success, if you like, that's not your weight, but if that's your success, if you like, the amount that you've lost is going to gradually go up and up and up and up. And as you get fitter and fitter, as you get lighter and lighter because of the healthy diet, if you like, you start making other changes and getting more exercise, and suddenly it becomes a kind of cumulative effect, this compound effect that Darren talks about. Similar thing to investments. If you can imagine just saving a little bit of money every day, putting a pound away rather than sort of spending it, and every day you put that pound away and you hardly notice a difference. But if you're putting that into some kind of investment account, and gradually with the kind of compound interest you start getting interest on it, then rather than getting more and more and more into debt, you get more and more and more into credit. And again, you can kind of see the compound effect of that. And both Jeff and Darren talk about these things in all sorts of different parts of the business. And a lot of the decisions that you make about, shall I bother to put some catalogues out today, or shall I make those follow-up calls to people that asked about the business? They're only tiny decisions, like one phone call or half an hour doing the cataloguing. But if you do that every day, it'll make a huge difference to your success or otherwise. So definitely recommend either of those books. They're really great. Another one that I particularly liked is it's quite an old one now. A chap called Dale Carnegie. he wrote a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People, and it's a really great book. It's set back in I think it's about the 1930s. It's in America, and it's kind of, there's lots of, it was when all of the kind of steel industries were really booming, and it's kind of, it's stories of Dale and his colleagues talking to other big American businessmen back in the day, and what he was saying was about, in terms of doing business with people, if you're nice to people and you take an interest in them, it's amazing what you get in return. And I just found that a really great book. It gives you all sorts of philosophies on life that help you. So definitely like that one. Another one here, this is again a particular favourite of mine, Darren Hardy, who wrote The Compound Effect that I mentioned on the last page. Also wrote this book. It's called Design Your Best Year Ever. And it's basically, it really appeals to my kind of systematic approach to doing things. And basically what he says is, at the start of a year, and it doesn't have to be January, it can be any 12 months. So you could start, where are we today, 21st of May, you could start on the 22nd of May for the next 12 months and design it so that it's your best year ever. And what you do is you basically create some fantastic goals, some sort of things that you really, really want to achieve in the year. And if all that you did is write down, I'd like to have a new Mercedes, or I'd like to get off my credit card debt, or whatever it might be, then getting from where you are now to that might seem quite a challenge, and you might not know how to go about doing it. But what this book does is it allows you to break that down into manageable chunks. So maybe instead of looking at something as something that I'm going to do over the next 12 months, you then break that down into monthly kind of chunks and weekly tasks, if you like, and daily actions. So you don't have to think about, oh crikey, I wish I could have that Mercedes. What you're thinking about is, today I'm going to talk to 3 people about whether they'd like to join the business. And that just makes it much more easy to kind of grasp that action and say, oh yeah, all I need to do is speak to 3 people. Right, I'm going to do that. And those little daily steps that all kind of combine into a fantastic goal. And that's a great book, and it's like a workbook. It's not just something you read. You write in it every day and every week, seeing what progress you've made, adjusting your steps and so on. So that's a really good book for doing that. Okay, can you remember at the beginning, a few questions for you now, just to make sure you've all been awake. At the beginning I said, work harder on yourself than you do on your... Can anyone remember what I said? Aha, Andrew, you're always very quick. Job well done, Martin. Yep, work harder on yourself than you do on your job. That's exactly right. Just kind of work on yourself, work on your own education. You'll be amazed what transformations you see in yourself. Yep, well done, Carl. On the ball there. Okay, of those books that I mentioned, quick question, was there any that any of you have already read? Or for those of you who haven't read any of them, was there any that particularly appealed to you that you thought, oh yeah, that sounds interesting? Oh yeah, Jan Rue, yeah, I haven't put any of hers up here, but she's well known in network marketing. She does lots of good stuff. Oh yeah, Susan, I agree with that. Slight Edge is a really good book. Yeah, Slight Edge, Martin. Good. Oh, good. Well, there you go. Hopefully I've inspired you to try and get one of those books and read it. I think if I've inspired any of you to get any of those books, then that's great, because you'll really kind of benefit from that. Okay, so we're kind of coming towards the end now, just wrapping up. What we've covered is... Oh, hi Martin, yeah, Tony Robbins, good stuff there as well. Think and Grow Rich, that's an interesting one, Tony, as well. That's, again, a classic that really kind of gets your mind around things. Right, just wrapping up now. What we've covered is basically follow the system. You really don't need to sort of start from scratch and work out yourself, how am I going to make this business work? Just follow the training, listen to your upline, and just do whatever they say, because if they're doing something that's working well, you don't need to change it. Make sure you've kind of understood a little bit about the network marketing and about the Kleeneze business. That will certainly help you, kind of just so you know what you're doing each day and what you're heading towards. And I would say get started on your personal development. Just pick one book and start reading it. Just kind of 5 pages, 10 pages at a time. wherever you can find the time. In this business, you become very good at making use of kind of small pockets of time. You know, if you're kind of sat waiting to pick your daughter up from school or something like that, you've got 10 minutes while you're waiting, you can be reading 10 pages of a great book. If you do that every day, you'll soon notice the difference. Okay, so that's the end of webinar number 6. Next week we're talking about goals and attitude. And I said earlier about all of these webinars, sorry, just go back there a minute. You can see there's a series of 8. So all 8 of them are recorded. It takes about 8, maybe 9 weeks, because I sometimes have a week off for you know, if I'm away or anything like that. But typically 8 different weeks, and then we go back to the beginning again and start all over again. But you don't need to wait for 8 weeks to get to one that you're particularly interested in, because they're all available on YouTube, as you can see there. I'm just going to stop the recording now so I can hang around for a little bit afterwards.